You are never technically alone anymore. Think about what that means for a moment. At virtually any hour of any day, you have access to more human contact than any person in the history of our species ever did. More voices. More faces. More words directed at you, responses available to you, communities open to you. The infrastructure of connection has never been more developed. More accessible. More frictionless. And yet, something is wrong. Not for some people. Not at the margins. Something is wrong at the center. In the data. In the clinical picture. In the quiet confession that happens when people are honest about the texture of their inner life. This is not a paradox to be explained away. This is a signal. A signal that something fundamental about the way human beings are designed to connect is being violated by the way we are currently connecting. That something is what this episode is about. Welcome to the Echo Principle. Tonight we trace the biology, the neuroscience, and the evolutionary logic of human loneliness. And we ask the question that the data demands we ask. What is connection actually for? And are we getting any of it? Loneliness is not a feeling. That framing, loneliness as an emotional state, a mood, a subjective experience that some people are more prone to than others, fundamentally misrepresents what the research has revealed over the last 2 decades. Loneliness is a biological signal. As specific, as functional, and as evolutionarily purposeful as hunger or thirst or pain. This is the central claim of the work of neuroscientist John Cacioppo, who spent 3 decades building the most comprehensive scientific understanding of loneliness ever assembled. Cacioppo and his colleagues demonstrated that loneliness is not a response to being alone. It is a response to perceived social disconnection. To the gap between the social connection you have and the social connection your nervous system assesses as necessary for survival. And it produces, in the body, a specific and measurable physiological response. Elevated cortisol levels. Increased inflammatory markers. Disrupted sleep architecture. Altered immune function. Accelerated cellular aging as measured by telomere length. Chronic loneliness, Cacioppo's research showed, is associated with a 45% increased risk of premature death. It is more dangerous to long-term health than obesity. More dangerous than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Loneliness is not a mood. It is a medical condition. One that the body experiences with the same urgency it brings to any other threat to survival. Because for most of human evolutionary history, social disconnection was a threat to survival. The individual separated from the group did not last long. The signal is ancient. The environment in which it is now firing is new. And the mismatch between the two is at the heart of everything we will discuss today. The concept of evolutionary mismatch is one of the most powerful explanatory frameworks in modern psychology and medicine. The idea is straightforward. Evolution is slow. Culture is fast. And when cultural change outpaces evolutionary adaptation, the result is a nervous system running ancient programs in a world those programs were never designed to navigate. The human nervous system evolved over hundreds of thousands of years in a specific social context. Small groups. Somewhere between 50 and 150 individuals. Stable over time. Characterized by daily face-to-face contact. By shared physical space. By the kind of sustained, embodied, multisensory presence that constitutes genuine social contact at the biological level. In that context, the belonging signal was calibrated. The nervous system could accurately assess the quality and quantity of social connection available. Could register genuine belonging when it was present. And could generate the loneliness signal, the motivating discomfort of social disconnection, when it was not. Then everything changed. In a span of time that is, from an evolutionary perspective, essentially instantaneous. We moved from villages to cities. From stable communities to mobile, fragmented social networks. From embodied presence to mediated communication. From the small group to the global network. And we handed the nervous system a problem it had never been asked to solve before. How to assess the quality of social connection in an environment where the quantitative signals of connection, messages received, likes accumulated, followers gained, are entirely decoupled from the biological reality of genuine belonging. The nervous system does not know what to do with 1,000 online followers. It was calibrated for 50 real people who knew your name. This is the question that cuts to the heart of the loneliness epidemic. What does genuine connection actually require, at the biological level, to register as real? The research gives a surprisingly specific answer. Genuine social connection, the kind that satisfies the belonging signal and reduces the loneliness response, requires several elements that digital communication systematically fails to provide. The first is physical co-presence. The nervous system reads social safety and belonging through the body. Through the regulation that occurs in the presence of another nervous system. Through the subtle, largely unconscious synchronization of breath, heart rate, and facial expression that happens when two people are physically in the same space. This co-regulation, the nervous system calming in response to the proximity of a trusted other, is one of the most fundamental mechanisms of mammalian social bonding. It cannot be replicated through a screen. The second is reciprocal vulnerability. Genuine connection requires the mutual exposure of something real. Something that carries risk. Something that could be met with rejection but is instead met with acceptance. This exchange of vulnerability is the mechanism through which trust is built and the belonging signal is satisfied. Curated self-presentation, the carefully managed version of the self that most people offer on social platforms, is the opposite of vulnerability. It is armor. And armor, however beautifully crafted, does not connect. The third is sustained attention over time. Belonging is not established in a single interaction. It is built through repeated, consistent, reciprocal attention across extended periods. Through the accumulation of shared experience. Through being known not in the snapshot but in the full complexity of the ongoing self. In Japan, there is a word for something that has no precise equivalent in most other languages. Hikikomori. Derived from the Japanese words for pulling inward and being confined. The hikikomori are individuals, the majority of them young men, who have withdrawn almost entirely from social life. Who live in their rooms. Who interact with the world, if at all, through screens. Who have retreated from the unbearable friction of genuine social contact into a controlled, manageable, self-contained existence. The phenomenon was first identified and named by the psychiatrist Tamaki Saito in the 1990s. At that time it was understood primarily as a Japanese cultural pathology. A product of the specific pressures of Japanese academic and professional culture. The crushing weight of social expectation. The terror of failure in a society where failure carries profound shame. But as the decades passed and the phenomenon spread to South Korea, to the United States, to Europe, to countries with very different cultural pressures, the cultural explanation became insufficient. Something more universal was at work. What the Hikikomori phenomenon represents, at its core, is the logical endpoint of a particular response to the pain of social connection. A response that says, connection hurts too much, the risk of rejection is too great, the gap between who I am and who I need to be in public is too exhausting to maintain. And so I will withdraw. I will find a world within these walls that I can control. That will not reject me. That will not require me to be something I cannot sustain. This response is not unique to Hikikomori. It exists on a spectrum. And the digital environment has made the early and middle portions of that spectrum extraordinarily accessible to an extraordinarily large number of people. There is a specific quality of loneliness that is worse than ordinary solitude. More disorienting. More difficult to name and therefore more difficult to address? The loneliness of being surrounded by people and still feeling entirely alone. The person at the party who is talking, laughing, performing the social script with apparent competence, and feeling underneath it all a disconnection so complete it borders on the surreal. The employee in the open-plan office who is never technically alone and who eats lunch alone every day in the most fundamental sense. The person in the long-term relationship who has not been genuinely known by their partner in years. This is the loneliness that the belonging signal was not designed to address. Because the signal was calibrated for an environment where physical presence and genuine connection were more reliably correlated. Where being surrounded by your group meant being in genuine contact with your group. In the modern environment, that correlation has broken down. You can be physically surrounded by people and socially starving. You can have hundreds of digital connections and no one who knows the actual texture of your life. And the body responds to this situation with the full force of the loneliness signal. The cortisol elevation. The sleep disruption. The hypervigilance to social threat. The narrowing of attention toward potential rejection. Cassiopo's research showed that chronically lonely individuals process social information differently from non-lonely individuals. They show heightened neural responses to social threat stimuli. They interpret ambiguous social signals more negatively. They enter social situations with a threat detection system running at elevated sensitivity, which makes genuine connection harder, not easier. The loneliness signal, designed to motivate social reconnection, can instead produce a defensive posture that makes reconnection more difficult. Let us be precise about the relationship between social media use and loneliness. Because the research is more nuanced than the simple narrative, social media causes loneliness that circulates in popular discourse. The relationship is bidirectional. And the direction of causality matters enormously for understanding what is actually happening. Passive social media consumption, scrolling, observing, absorbing the curated presentations of other people's lives without active participation, is consistently associated with increased loneliness, increased social comparison, and decreased well-being across multiple studies and populations. Active social media use, direct communication, genuine exchange, using digital tools to coordinate and sustain real-world relationships, shows a considerably more mixed picture. In some populations, particularly older adults and individuals in geographically isolated situations, active digital communication genuinely extends and sustains social connection in ways that support well-being. The distinction is between using digital tools to support genuine connection and using digital tools as a substitute for it. The problem is that the platforms are not designed to support the former. They are designed to maximize the latter. Because passive consumption generates more engagement, more data, more revenue than active reciprocal communication. The infinite scroll is more profitable than the phone call. So the environment systematically steers users toward the form of digital interaction that research consistently shows is most associated with loneliness. Not because the engineers want their users to be lonely, but because loneliness, like all forms of dissatisfaction, keeps people scrolling. Keeps them looking for the connection that the platform promises and structurally cannot deliver. One of the most striking features of the current loneliness epidemic is the degree to which it is distributed across age groups that previous generations would not have identified as at risk. The assumption has always been that loneliness is primarily a problem of the elderly, of the widowed, the retired, the physically isolated. And it is a serious problem in those populations. The research on loneliness among older adults is both extensive and sobering. But the current epidemic is showing its most severe manifestations in a population that would have seemed implausible as its primary victims a generation ago. Young adults. Multiple large-scale surveys conducted in the United States and Europe in recent years have found that individuals between the ages of 18 and 25 report higher rates of loneliness than any other age group. Higher than the elderly. Higher than middle-aged adults. Higher than any demographic that previous models of loneliness would have predicted. The generation that grew up with social media. That has never known a world without smartphones. that has the most access to digital connection of any generation in history, reports the highest rates of loneliness. This finding is not a coincidence. It is a signal. One that points directly at the distinction between the quantity of available connection and the quality of experienced belonging, between the infrastructure of contact and the reality of genuine human presence. The young adult who has 500 digital contacts and no one to call when something goes wrong is experiencing something the data is now forcing us to name with precision. Not a personal failure, a systemic one. The research on recovery from chronic loneliness points in a direction that is both encouraging and demanding. Encouraging because genuine recovery is possible. Demanding because it requires exactly the things that loneliness makes most difficult. The most robustly supported intervention in the loneliness literature is not social skills training, which is the intuitive first response and which research suggests has limited effectiveness on its own. It is something more fundamental. The modification of the threat detection bias. Because Cassiopo's research showed that chronic loneliness is maintained not primarily by a lack of social opportunity but by the hypervigilant threat detection system that loneliness itself produces. The tendency to interpret ambiguous social signals as threatening, to anticipate rejection, to read neutral faces as hostile, to construct, from the available evidence, a social world that confirms the existing model of danger and disconnection. Interventions that address this bias directly, that help chronically lonely individuals identify and examine the automatic negative interpretations their nervous system generates, show significantly better outcomes than interventions that simply increase social exposure without addressing the cognitive filter through which social experience is processed. You cannot simply add more connection to a system that is filtering all incoming connection through a threat detection lens. The filter must be addressed first. This insight has profound implications not just for clinical intervention but for the ordinary person sitting with a degree of chronic loneliness that they have never quite named. The question is not only how to find more social opportunity. It is also, what interpretation am I bringing to the social opportunities already present? Here is the reframe that the research consistently points toward. The one that is most counterintuitive in a culture that measures social health in quantities. Loneliness is not primarily a problem of quantity. It is a problem of quality. The research on what actually satisfies the belonging signal, what actually reduces the physiological markers of loneliness, consistently emphasizes depth over breadth. A single relationship characterized by genuine mutual knowledge, genuine reciprocal vulnerability, and genuine sustained attention is more protective against loneliness than a large network of shallow connections. Robert Dunbar, the anthropologist whose work on social group sizes produced what is now known as Dunbar's number, has spent decades studying the structure of human social networks. His research suggests that the human capacity for genuine social connection, the kind that requires real cognitive and emotional investment, is limited to somewhere between 3 and 5 people at the innermost circle. 3 to 5 people. In a world where social worth is measured in follower counts and connection metrics in the thousands. The implication is not that large networks are worthless. They serve real functions. But they do not serve the function of genuine belonging. And the confusion between the two, the substitution of network size for relational depth, is one of the primary mechanisms through which the loneliness epidemic sustains itself. The question to ask is not, how many people do I know? The question is, how many people know me? Really? In the complexity and contradiction and ongoing reality of who I actually am. For most people, if they answer honestly, the number is very small. And making it slightly larger, investing in 1 or 2 relationships with genuine depth and genuine reciprocity may be the most consequential thing available to them. Let us talk about why this is harder than it sounds. Because the prescription, invest in fewer, deeper relationships, sounds simple. And it is not. Genuine connection requires genuine vulnerability. And genuine vulnerability requires the willingness to be known before you know whether being known is safe. to expose something real before you have confirmation that it will be received with care. This is not a small ask for anyone. And it is a particularly large ask for people whose early experiences of vulnerability were met with inconsistency, dismissal, or rejection. Whose nervous system learned, through accumulated experience, that showing the real self is dangerous. That the managed, curated, defended version of the self is the only safe version to offer. The loneliness researcher Brené Brown has spent decades studying the relationship between vulnerability and connection. Her findings are consistent and unambiguous. Vulnerability is not the opposite of connection. It is the price of admission. The only path through which genuine connection becomes possible. Not performed vulnerability. Not the strategic disclosure of carefully selected personal information designed to create the appearance of openness while maintaining the reality of control. Genuine vulnerability. The kind that feels risky because it is. The kind that might not be met with the care it deserves. The willingness to risk that, to extend genuine contact into the uncertainty of whether it will be genuinely received, is one of the most courageous things a human being can do. In a culture that has made the performance of connection so frictionless and the reality of it so rare. The most practical thing this episode can offer is also the simplest. And the most radical given the environment we are navigating. Be present. Genuinely, fully, physically present with the people you are with. Not as a mindfulness prescription. Not as a self-help instruction. As a biological imperative. Because presence, real, embodied, undivided presence, is the medium through which genuine connection actually occurs. And it is the thing most systematically destroyed by the attention economy. The phone on the table during the meal does not need to be checked. Its presence alone is enough to reduce the quality of connection between the people at the table. Research on what has been called the iPhone effect shows that the mere visible presence of a smartphone, even a switched-off one, reduces the depth of conversation and the degree of empathy reported between conversation partners. The device does not need to interrupt. Its presence is the interruption. It signals to every nervous system in the room that this conversation is competing with something else. That full attention is not available. That the connection on offer is partial. And partial connection does not satisfy the belonging signal. It teases it. It offers just enough to prevent the loneliness from becoming acute while never delivering enough to allow it to genuinely resolve. The practice of genuine presence, of offering full, undivided, embodied attention to the people you are actually with, is both the simplest and most countercultural act available in the current moment. It costs nothing. It requires no technology. And it delivers precisely what 300,000 years of human evolution have been waiting for. We are the most connected species in the history of life on this planet. We have built systems of communication so vast and so fast that a message can reach the other side of the world in less time than it takes to draw a breath. We have created platforms that put us in contact with more human beings than any of our ancestors could have imagined encountering in a lifetime. And we are lonely. Not because connection is unavailable, but because we have confused the infrastructure of connection for the thing itself. Because we have accepted the simulation of belonging in place of the reality. Because the systems we have built to bring us together have been optimized not for genuine human connection but for the metrics that can be measured and monetized. The belonging signal does not care about your follow count. It does not register the like. It cannot be satisfied by the scroll. It was built for something older and slower and more demanding. For the presence of another nervous system. For the risk of genuine vulnerability. For the slow accumulation of being known. None of that has changed. Despite everything that has changed around it. The loneliness epidemic is not evidence that human beings have become worse at connection. It is evidence that we have been handed substitutes for so long that many of us have forgotten what the real thing feels like. But we have not forgotten entirely. The signal still fires. The hunger is still there. The belonging system is still intact, still waiting, still capable of being satisfied by exactly what it was always designed for. One real conversation. One genuine moment of being known. One relationship in which the full weight of who you actually are is finally, carefully, allowed to be seen. That is not a small thing. In the current moment, it may be the most important thing. This has been the Echo Principle. We map the unseen blueprints of human behavior so that you can find your way back to what was always real. We will see you in the next one.